Well, welcome everyone to Lessons from the Field. As you know, this is a series of interviews that we do with guests who have a passion for pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. And today we're featuring Marilyn Hill, who's one of our PharmD alums from 2018. Marilyn did a residency and has a master's degree in health administration. And she's now the pharmacy manager, ambulatory pharmacy manager at Dartmouth Hitchcock Hospital in Lebanon, New Hampshire.
So I am the ambulatory pharmacy manager here at Dartmouth Hitchcock. So I oversee our increasingly centralizing anticoagulation service line. Under my supervision, I have nurses and pharmacists, and we are currently blending operations under the Department of Pharmacy when they used to be housed under primary care. I also oversee primary care pharmacists that are embedded in practices across the system. So they're working side by side with primary care providers to care for complex disease states through collaborative practice agreements. Yeah, and a day-to-day, I have a lot of meetings. I am a manager, so I talk to HR sometimes. I have a lot of one-on-ones with my team. We have a lot of staff meetings to make sure our team is working well, both teams. And then I meet with a lot of external stakeholders too. So each one of the clinics where my staff are located, I need to have good relationships with local leadership, with the nurse managers that govern that scope of practice, and everyone else that I report up through as well.
Wow, that sounds like a big job. Remind me how you ended up out in New Hampshire.
Honestly, it was through networking. So I did a 2-year residency at the Medical College of Wisconsin, which was the blended administrative and leadership residency that came with an MHA as well. And after that, I knew that I wanted to be in leadership somewhere in a health system. And I really liked ambulatory practice, despite not having been a practitioner formally outside of residency, but I think that's a place that we can definitely grow as a profession. Collaborative practice agreements have always been fascinating to me. And this job was open, basically. I was looking for something in ambulatory care, and I knew the CPO here. Her name's Stacy. I actually met her at a conference when I was a resident, and we just stayed in touch. And wow. I interviewed out here and it felt right. So moved my husband across the country, and now we live in the woods.
So that sounds great. Well, and not enough people do the administrative residencies like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a great combination, the clinical training and then the administrative, because many people end up in those positions down the road, and getting that experience and training is really crucial. So I'm really happy for you. So we have a number of questions that we can go through. I mean, not necessarily in any particular order, but you know, you've been out for a few years now, kind of seen healthcare, the goods and the bads. Is there anything that you've seen that you wish you could change about our healthcare system or pharmacy in particular?
Yeah, so if I had my dream, I would want CMS, or the Center of Medicare and Medicaid Services, to recognize pharmacists as providers. There are many paths that all end with the fact that CMS does not recognize us as providers, which is really problematic. And we can piecemeal across the country, do all of these different things to expand scope of practice, which is really helpful. But in terms of billing and really true continuity of care, it all comes down to them recognizing that. So I will continue to work towards that. That is a small or rather lofty career goal.
Yes,
but yeah, I think that would be my one wish if I had one.
Well, that's fantastic. That would be fantastic for the profession, and I know there's many others also hoping for and working towards that. Hopefully, with all of that inertia, we'll get there eventually. Yeah. Another question, kind of global is, you know, in your role, whether it's been as a resident or now at Dartmouth, I'm sure that you've had a lot of great exposure to and impact on patients and populations. Where do you think pharmacists can have the most significant impact as a profession?
In the outpatient realm or in ambulatory care specifically, I think we can have the biggest impact by managing chronic disease states. We have a doctorate degree in medication management, and our colleagues are really overburdened by all of the high quality metrics they're held to in the current state of healthcare. By managing chronic disease states and the medications associated with them, we can make sure the patient really understands what they're doing and what they're taking and why they're taking them. And we can address all of the adherence barriers that are really, really easy to gloss over if you are a PCP trying to do 20 things in a 20-minute appointment. So I think that's our bread and butter on the outpatient side of things. And I know there's value elsewhere as well, but that is the song I continue to sing for my staff.
Good. I'm sure, I don't know the health system very well there, but are some of the sites rural where there's fewer practitioners and, big role for pharmacists?
Yeah, it is. I don't know that any of them are technically medically underserved, but I have a well. I live in sort of in town. I have a well and septic and everything. So love the forest, really enjoying my time out here, but I would classify it as a rural area largely for the most part.
So, given what you just said, kind of what you would change and where you think pharmacists have this significant impact, particularly in ambulatory care where you work. What advice do you have for our students or young pharmacists that are just starting that, to help them prepare to either be an advocate for those changes or to really be successful and have that same impact that you've experienced?
I would say it's never too early to start. And I think our profession continues to be limited by people not understanding what we're capable of doing outside the walls of a pharmacy. Obviously, we need that, right? Absolutely not knocking that. That is an essential piece of healthcare. But I truly believe that in order for us to be integrated into the rest of the team, we need to overcome this misconception of that's the only place we belong. I was testifying at a Senate hearing yesterday because I want to change some statutes relative to collaborative practice in our state. And we kept on brushing up against that fundamental concept of the pharmacist doesn't need to just stay in the pharmacy. And I would encourage those students and to everybody watching that you're going to encounter times where people will make assumptions about what you do, no matter what you end up doing. And you're going to be faced with the decision of, do I let that slide because it's not worth explaining? Or do I really try to make this person understand what I can and am doing? And I would encourage you to try to do that consistently. I've finally gotten my in-laws, for example, who are regular lay people, to totally understand and buy into all of the things I've been telling them for, 8 years or whatever it is. And I'm really proud of that. And I hope that everybody watching can do that for the people in their lives and they can tell their friends. And only through that cultural change can we really make waves.
Yeah. Well, that must have been interesting. Did you feel like the senators or legislators heard you and understood?
Yeah, I think we finally got to the root of the misunderstanding after some discussion. And I don't think that the venue was really the right place for it. So we left the room saying, the person who was confused said, I will support this for now, but I have additional questions. And we are working offline to set up a meeting with them prior to hitting the floor for vote.
Good. Well, that advocacy is so important. So
yeah,
kudos to you. I guess also by way of, advice for our current students or recent graduates, what do you see in the future, like further out, or what excites you about, or what are the advances that you might project in the future of pharmacy, and how our folks could start thinking about those earlier in their training and careers?
What excites me the most is integrating pharmacists more deeply into complex disease management. And I know that UIC is wonderful at doing that. A lot of places in the Midwest are really good at doing that. And I think that is where the profession needs to grow, particularly in ambulatory care. Out here on the East Coast, things are not quite as progressive, I would say, just by virtue of the laws and the culture. And that's what I'm most excited about changing coming out here and trying to get us on par with the rest of the nation, to be honest. But I will say, regardless of where you practice, that advocacy in and outside of your professional world is going to be really important for you feeling satisfied and comfortable in the work that you do every day, regardless of where you end up working.
So Marilyn, I guess I guess I'd just like to ask again, by way of advice for our current students. You haven't been out that long. You still remember, well, I'm sure your days here and classes and so forth, and what you did during your time in pharmacy school. Is there any advice you have for our current students to take advantage of opportunities that they have, whether it's, courses they take or other opportunities?
Yeah, I would say to throw yourself very deeply into the work that you have in front of you now. Pharmacy school was really, really hard. I will not deny that. It was very challenging, but that is the foundation of the rest of your career. And even in residency, you're not going to be a textbook learner anymore unless you did a master's like I did, which we can talk about later. But for the most part, like this is the wrap up of your professional student career. So I'd encourage you to get the most out of your classes, try to ask questions. I found that being really engaged really helped my learning, and that's ultimately like what carries you forward through the NAPLEX and then into practice. The other things I would mention is to stay involved in student organizations. Regardless of where you end up working, the ability to balance your work and professional life and then your personal life as well is going to be really helpful for you maintaining sanity later on. And then that also feeds your network. So I mentioned the whole point that I got this job was through some networking that I had, and I would fully recommend taking advantage of that. Obviously, it's really challenging now with everything being COVID and over Zoom, but it's still possible. And through mentorship programs, I know UIC has one. I participated in that as a student. I still email her occasionally too. But reaching out to people that you might have questions for. I do this often. I go to the Board of Pharmacy meeting every week, and if I have someone that brings up something interesting, I will send them a private chat and say, hey, I thought your point was really cool. Can I have your email so we can talk later? And that is something that Zoom and WebEx has enabled us to do, which we were not able to previously. So instead of going to conferences and getting people's business cards, now you can try to like message people for their emails based off of the discussions they've had. And I think growing your network's really important. And
Yeah, that's great advice. I can't believe your Board of Pharmacy meets every week, but
oh, did I say week?
yeah.
I meant month. I meant
okay.
monthly.
Okay, that's okay. That's great. So Marilyn, maybe just one last question for our students, just about the path that you took, and where you've gotten, and advice you have for other students on after they graduate, what are the things to think about, what are the decisions that you had to make, and that helped you get where you are.
Yeah, so I think prioritizing what you want out of your career is really important. For me, I threw myself projects, and I was sometimes too involved in student organizations. That balancing thing I learned very quickly. But I think that really helped me sort out what was important to me and what I needed from the rest of my career. So I knew early on that I wanted to do an administrative residency program. And since I knew so early, I might as well do a combined PGY 1 and 2. That was really helpful because I got the clinical pieces of it. And then I used that clinical piece to help inform the decisions I was able to make as a resident when I took on some operational leadership as well. You also get to build those relationships within the same institution. And I had a really great experience at Freighter in Wisconsin. I would also say to try to travel if you're not held down. I know I didn't go very far, but I did interview all over the country. And I'm still convinced that if Freighter were anywhere else, I still would have matched with them because we were just the right fit. And if you're able to expand your network beyond just the Chicago area and go see practice elsewhere for a year or two, I would encourage you to do that so you can grow your network and try to meet some new people and see a new place, which is always exciting. I would also put a plug in. Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health does have a new PGY1-2 Health System Pharmacy Administration and Leadership residency with a master's. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that. We have our inaugural class we are hoping to match this cycle, and then hopefully will remain a program. So we'll definitely be on your radar if you are interested in checking out Practice Out East.
Great. We'll get your contact information when we send this link out too. So
Cool.
hopefully we'll have some students interested in that. Just as we wrap up, I know you mentioned that that you like to hike in the woods and enjoying the Northeast, but what advice do you have for anybody, I guess, not just our students, but all of us on balancing work where obviously you've been very successful, but your other ways you enjoy your life?
Yeah, I think you got to discover what keeps you grounded. So for me, going outdoors and just taking a minute and inhaling the pine tree smell is what keeps me relaxed, grounded, sane, whatever adjective you want to bring. Taking our canoe out on the weekends is also fun. We adopted a dog. He's a high ball of energy, but he's a good hiking buddy too. And I think identifying the hobbies and the things that bring you peace are really important. So I like to practice yoga. I knit. I'm a big knitter. And my husband does jujitsu. You got to figure out what you like so you can make sure that you still cultivate a life after you're done with your training. If that ends at pharmacy school or residency or fellowship or whatever, there will come a time where you are faced with ample free time that you have not seen in a very long time. And you got to be ready for being a real person again and accepting that your entire identity is not being a pharmacist. You are also a human and you have to go live your life.
Wow, great advice. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Marilyn. It's great to have seen you do so well. I can tell by looking at your whiteboard behind you how organized you are. Which I hope you learned at least partly as a student here at UIC. So yeah, it's great to see you and your success, and look forward to talking with you again in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.